Good evening. My name is Rebecca Orekia. I'm a senior instructional designer and training developer at Waters Corporation. I'm here to introduce my my partner at work. Sorry, public speaking is not quite my forte. So Jeremy is the senior project manager at Waters Corporation. He is the program chair for this month's event this evening. He and I were on a team where we were trying to resolve some challenges with leveraging a brand new knowledge transfer and communications platform at our company. And it was a bit challenging. Jennifer was right. Business doesn't have to be boring, but try to convince management of that. And it can be quite challenging. So Jeremy is going to come up here and talk to you about our success and how we were able to implement that for the program launch.
All right, so as Rebecca talked about, I'm with Waters Corporation. I'm a senior IT project manager. I was a member of a cross-functional program team that reported into our vice presidents of IT and sales and marketing that focused on a new use of some tools internal to our group. And they were centered around a few specific factors that really impacted us or are going to impact us greatly over the coming years. And much to what was said, a lot of these things do need to be started with the end in mind, right? So about 30% of our company, this was about a year and a half ago now, was set to retire within the next 5 to 7 years. We grew from 6 recent acquisitions, so incorporating a bunch of new and differing product lines and processes. And we were driven by a corporate culture of tribal knowledge, right? So we had grown from a somewhat small multi-million-dollar organization into a $2 billion organization over a span of about 5 to 6 years. And because of that, that growth really forced a lot of process to grow and start to evolve. But running tribal knowledge inside of that scale of an organization left us at a huge disadvantage, right? Our key people that knew information that sustained us for that period of time were getting ready to leave. Myself, when I joined, this was about 5 years ago now, I was brought in and I replaced 2 people who had been there for a total of 91 years. I mean, what do you do, right? You say, all right, you just give up right as it starts, right? And not only did they have all that knowledge, they didn't write anything down because they were a little bit old school, and they liked to have people come to their office and talk about things and work them out. And so that really set up a really difficult first 4 months for me specifically, in that I had to not only figure out what they knew, I then had to figure out who might know what they knew or who knew bits and pieces of what they knew, and I had to figure out the paths and work their way through. Now, I had a great management structure who was there to help with that, but he didn't know all that information. It was really segmented. So they created, all of that created one big problem for us, right? And so all of that tribal knowledge that was in there about organizational charts and who reports to who and the process that goes into everything, reporting back and forth, all of these things you can imagine are just out there in people's minds. And so we decided that as a group, our big next step is a social collaboration suite. So this was a product that we brought in, designed and developed by IBM, that we now use internally to help drive the collaboration communication across our global network. So like I said, we are about $2.5 billion now, and we are at about 6,500 employees globally in just about every country that they'll let us do business in from a medical device perspective. And so you can imagine that the difficulties of keeping everyone on the same page, keeping everybody engaged were challenging. So we were set to move from a nice slow company to become a fast collaborative company, right? Sounds great. Well, there were other big problems, right? The transition, it wasn't just a transition to a new platform, but it was a complete paradigm shift for a lot of the people, right? So we ran from a tribal knowledge culture where you're leveraged or judged upon how much you know, right? So I've got a line of people that come to my office every day. I am important, right? To an organization where you're really judged by how much you share, right? So in a collaboration kind of social environment, you're really putting information out there for people to find, not for them to find you to get that information. And we battled a lot of bias. Our demographic, as you could imagine, was a little bit older, being 30% of them set to retire. The average tenure at the company, I think, is about 25, 26 years. So you're battling a lot of, I've done it this way, why am I changing? And we faced items like, this is Facebook for work, or, what good am I if all of my knowledge is up here, right? Well, what are you doing to me? This is my job. I'm scared, right? Or I don't do social media, right? These things that impacted us. So that brought us back to the drawing board, right? So we said we know we're putting the investment into this because it's the right way to go. And what do we need to do to figure out how to help us over that initial hurdle? Now, happily, a lot of that feedback came back from a pilot that was run with about 150 users, and we were able to jump in front of that as part of that program structure. And so we turned to gamification with, again, a lot of great research done by Rebecca in terms of understanding how that might impact the bigger picture and even just the idea of pursuing these pieces to begin with. And it went through a series of phases, right, where we found the vendors that were out there, we reviewed the functionality and ran the demos. Then the most important part for us was that planning phase, right, where you sit there and, again, talk about what happens at the end. And really, we're trying to figure out what that mission was and the difficult areas we wanted to attack and build that structured gamification as opposed to just, saying, hey, here's a cool-looking pin that you'll get on an avatar, go for it. That's not just the only thing there. Now, that is an incentive. It looks cool. But there's a lot of things that are out there. Some other challenges that we face being global were some cultural barriers, right? There was a big initiative that we put out in our Japanese organization to try to overcome some traditional hierarchies that they have around sharing information outside in a bigger environment, right? Around even using a gamification structure. What happens if a subordinate has more points or more badges than his manager? It's a difficult cultural situation for them to run through. And so a lot of that came flushed out in our planning phases, and we put some serious programs and reverse mentorship structures in those areas to help get them through it. So then in terms of our delivery, really, we focused on incentivizing the desired behaviors, right? And that's truly what all these games and everything does, right? You're playing a game, you want the high score. You're incentivizing a certain behavior, and that behavior is to do what it takes to get that high score, right? And thinking about the end in mind in terms of gamification comes to say, well, what are those things that we can do that put points inside of to make people want to do that, so then they get that intrinsic feeling saying, hey, I really want to win. But that means I have to go and post these, journal articles of my job, right? So I have to post 5 of those, and I get this really cool badge, and I get points. And then I can go to Jim, 2 offices over, who I know hasn't done it, and say, hey, Jim, I got you, right? And that type of culture is what helped, and that structure really focused on it. And one of the key factors that we did, again, it's subtly different than many of the people that have come up here before in that we're doing this inside of a truly work environment. There is no quote-unquote fun, although, MIT pulled that in too, right? But, we were a very structured and focused organization where fun was a weird thing in context of it. So it was important that we publicize the results of these as well to help bring that social pressure around so that, again, those conversations talking to Jim 2 offices down when I finished my badge happened. And that really helped us get over that initial hurdle of, this is Facebook for work. I don't understand this. So I need hands-on training. I need all of this. And in reality, it helped to spur that desire to ask your neighbor and say, hey, I was just trying this. You don't necessarily need to give why, but, I wanted to beat John, who just came at me and said that, hey, he just finished his badge, so I better finish this. But maybe I'm going to have to ask somebody now to say, hey, help me get through this. And it built a nice little culture of even closer communication outside of the tribal knowledge world, but more of, again, that collaborative, we work together for the betterment of the company environment. And a key factor of that was, supported documentation that was posted and training and information around how to get there. So that came in forms of certain incentives. One was a badge, which essentially when we went live, this was a first of its kind in our organization. Nobody knew what to do, nobody knew how to do it, and there wasn't the training budget to go in front of everyone around the world to say, hey, this is how we do it. So the idea was put together to build a training program inside of the gamification application where essentially they needed to complete a series of tasks in order to achieve whatever we decided was ultimately the goal for them. And that ended up being a flight plan badge, and it was beautifully designed by Rebecca as it is. And it got to a point where our help desk was able to kind of leverage that in terms of lowering their ticket rates in saying that the first thing that they would do is check to see if the person completed the flight plan badge. If they hadn't, their response was, go complete the flight plan badge. And because of that, that helped force that culture shock of self-service organization from a spoon-fed organization, and has really helped started moving us along. There are also additional badges and structures built around certain behaviors that we wanted to get up there. Again, this is a lot focused on knowledge transfer and knowledge management, and so posting your content out there, we weighted very heavily. And again, showing a leaderboard helped to incentivize people to say, hey, I'm only 2 points away from the top 10. Let me go do a few more things today and make sure I post. Now, the challenge with that is that people will game the system, right? You always want to win, so you're going to just do some things that get done. And so it's about setting that culture, that structure of purposeful intent and posting the things that matter as opposed to just posting something to say, I did it. And then it also helped us from an analytics side, right? So when you're launching something brand new that's never been into an organization, you really aren't quite sure where it's going to shake out, right? You can put a strategy in place and you have a plan, but as soon as the thing goes live, the plan's who knows, right? So the benefit of having the gamification engine was that while it was tracking all of these things to provide the superlatives to the people that are out there, it also tracked that so that we, from a program team perspective, could see where people were going. Did that match what our strategy was? Were there any surprises? Is there anything low that we maybe need to put a campaign out there and try to incentivize people further to move forward, right? Because gamification isn't just set and run. It's set, review, and then you can adjust to what you want, right? You're influencing behaviors inside of the company. And so, you compare those against the expected results and then change that strategy as you need to. And so the end result is that our unique usage per month is about 85% of our company. Now we're a manufacturing company, so about 10% of those leftovers are people that will not even be at a computer in a given week. So we've kind of written them off. But so to say we've hit about 90 to 95% of our target audience on a monthly basis that'll go in here and engage and do exactly what we're looking for. We do directly attribute a lot of those high numbers to some of that incentivization that we put in around the gamification. And again, it increased our visibility into some of the analytics where we can go in there and say, to date, for the past year, we've had over almost 1.15 million files shared and engaged inside of our platform across, again, 6,500 people. That's a lot of files. That's a lot of communication that's happening now through a tool that is searchable, extensible, and available, as opposed to before where it was email, tribal knowledge, tribal communications, and it's really anecdotal of some major shifts that happened inside of the organization. So that's our story at Waters, and I appreciate your time.